the board, by the way. I mean, let me show why the resignation happened there, because we started going off on a different kind of storyline. But Maxime, by the way, finally gets, we'll call it the 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 F5. This move is about 20 moves too late in this position. And after takes and knight to c6, dual threats of knight e7, Forktown, population king and rook, combined with just rushing the a-pawn, and he had enough. So I think the question, Robert, as we come back to the live game here, is whether we'll see this again, right? I mean, will we see Maxime venture into the 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 more than once?
Great question. After that first foray, I don't know if he really wants to. That was not a good showing on his part, but okay, you're entitled to a single bad game. But in this particular game right now, where we're in game 3, now it's tied 1-1, Wesley should have more confidence. He's playing the black side of a position that I always think is very solid, because with d5, that's where all of the tension is. Whether white will take on d5, in which case black would prefer to take with the knight and hand white an isolated pawn. But if you take with a knight, you're removing one of your principled kingside defensive pieces, right? That knight on f6 covers h7, so it also, just keeps white's queen eventually from coming to squares like h5. So instead, Wesley adopts this setup, but the downside of this is the dark squares over there on the king side. Of course, the bishop on b2 would love to be over on h6 or something like this, but queen d2 is still an option, jumping the queen over to the king side. And you can take on d5 at any moment as well. Just keep that in the back of your head.
Yeah, I also feel like the position is very solid, and the tension that surrounds the d5, c4 breakthrough for both sides is really key. And what I like about the way these players, high-level players in chess, how they approach these positions is that they're very good at maneuvering their pieces, not just for the current structure, but always anticipating what could happen if it changes here. I like g6 and bishop f8 for black, because he's putting himself in a spot where, should he eventually take, or now take with the knight and create the isolated pawn on d4, the bishop is in an ideal spot, not just on g7, but also this pawn structure is very solid from the threats you highlighted earlier. Often in an IQP, white has tactics on the b1 h7 diagonal. So look at how black basically remaneuvered his pieces over the last several moves to be in an ideal spot to now kind of put pressure against the d4 pawn. That's just great technical kind of footwork, if you will, by Wesley So, right?
Yeah, and now there's more tension. It's maybe not pawn tension, but there's knight tension. Look at the knight on e5, knight on c6. If black takes on e5, I take with the d pawn, I gain more space. I can control the d6 square, the f6 square. And if you don't take on e5, which you probably shouldn't, the question is, what do you do instead? Right? It's a very essential question. And what move candidates do we have? Well, sometimes, and I'm not suggesting it here because I don't like it, black plays, I was about to say f5.
He goes for it.
I don't like the move. He liked the move. But f5 has the clear drawback of giving you a backward pawn on the e file. So once I move my knight to d2, eventually your pawn e6 is just stuck in its place.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the key reasons why he justifies it is I think he can get, maybe not right away, but normally f5 would be even worse if somehow white was getting access to the g5 square right away. If this bishop were on a different diagonal, if knight g5 was coming, because combine that with things like bishop to c4 and you've got real problems. But I guess the point is, dynamically, black is trying to say, I know this has really big potential drawbacks, but I'm hopeful that white's pieces not being on their normal, most active positions, maybe the bishop's on f1, that can justify it. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of speculating here, but I start to look at queen g5, and I don't know why. I guess I have this like bias in me that's clearly coming out in the way I'm talking about it, where I just feel like black is in a good spot here to maybe turn things around quickly.
Yeah, the knight on f4 is particularly nasty because knight takes h3 check. Maybe not now, but at some point is looking pretty good. Actually, knight takes h3 check was a possibility there, but it probably forced a draw, which is why Wesley's playing on.
Because he wants the d pawn here.
You're actually right. The position in just two quick moves is good for
and I think
black.
Wesley just understood, too, that white's normally with the drawback of f5 that would be, like, white's pieces were not in an ideal spot to take advantage of it, and now the d pawn's going to fall.
Yeah, and knight e5, let's show why that's not possible.
Okay.
Because after bishop takes e5, which is a move you typically do not want to play, giving up your fianchetto bishop, rook takes e5, there's queen takes e5, and the queen on d1 is hanging at the end of that variation.
I completed your sandwich there, buddy. I showed it on the board as you talked about it.
I appreciate that because you saw me complete my sandwich before the show.
That's right.
It's only now it's your turn to.
Robert threw down. I
did with a veggie sandwich. It was great.
Whoa. All right, well, if you're just getting here, we have roughly 5,000 of you across different platforms, just in English. Remember, you can also watch this in many different languages, including French, Russian, and Portuguese today. And Spanish. But thanks for being here, the 2019 Speed Chess Championship. Now, a stat earlier, Robert, showed that Wesley So has only ever lost the first game in a match once, which was to Magnus Carlsen. He lost the first game, but then he bounced back right away. And if he does well here as black, it looks like he continues to do what we predict is going to be the storyline, that Wesley should have the edge here on the slower time controls.
Yeah, and I think he is going to bounce back in this game. He's simply up a pawn in this end game, and it's one of these questions, Danny, is the one pawn enough? And at first glance, doesn't look like it's closer to level territory than it is to victory territory. Just because white has control of the open c file, which gives counterplay if this rook lands in c7. The extra pawn is this pawn e6. Not that easy to get that pawn rolling. And, now knight c4 looks good.
It's almost a draw for there. Because I think he'll go back and we might get a repeat.
Wait, but knight takes b6? Just give me a free pawn?
Wins. It's a funny line, though, right? Because if you go for that and then suddenly black's rook infiltrates, you might have rook and knight working well on the king side here. But no, white gets king f2 quickly, so I'm not buying it. I feel like Maxime has defended this very well. And look at the clock, by the way.
Yeah, good for Maxime. He was up 2 minutes earlier, but then he spent a long time trying to figure it out. And now a4 at some moment. Isn't white just have an outside pass pawn and an advantage here?
Yeah, if you play a4 and then it becomes sort of a split board, as we say, with counterplay on both sides, the bishop should be the better minor piece sort of exchange there. But, the one counterpoint to that is right now black is clearly the one with frets, right? Here comes f4. There's also e5. The rook is infiltrating to the second rank. So these are very double-edged positions for a reason. And the rook and knight will work well in close proximity, everyone. So you want them next to each other operating, whereas the rook and bishop are a long-distance relationship that Robert Hess is envious of. So.
Well, he's just giving up the g3 pawn. Look at Maxime go.
He's just running in. But here comes knight takes g3 next.
But e6 is hanging, b5 is hanging, so bishop takes b5, followed up with rook takes e6. And I guess I'm just a fan. Let me g4 here. So you said knight takes g3 is a threat. So there it is,
yeah,
g4.
Here he goes, g4. I like it. I want two things. I want f4 and the knight to come to g3, but just to show everybody. Oh, wait, actually, it almost does work because the bishop would be hanging. So can I get f4?
I'll have to go king d4, I guess.
Right, and then I'll get knight g. So now I actually got what I wanted, which was to keep this. Because with knight f2, where are you putting the bishop? You're going to take b5, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I thought I was getting more. Okay, no, not happening. Look, he's already transposed into kind of the idea I want, which is f4, but now he's done it better because he's taken away the d4 square for the king.
So, yeah, that's true. So f4 check at some moment could be annoying, not to mention if the bishop leaves the diagonal, rook e2 check at the right moment. So black is just trying to rely on the fact that there aren't too many pawns remaining. So if that knight might have to sacrifice itself for the b pawn at some moment, perhaps there's potential. And Danny, you know what I'm going to say. Look at the h8 square.
Yep.
Look at the color
of the bishop. Wrong color.
Yep. So if rooks get traded and the knight can sacrifice itself for the b pawn and the f pawn is traded for those f and e pawns, then it's already a draw because the bishop does not match the h8 square. And, Maxime going for the pawns right away.
Rook e2, nice move. You're threatening rook e3.
Such an easy move to forget about because the bishop was on b5 covering the
It's
square.
A psychological thing, right? We're just not considering moves like this, but their calculation so impressive. And now look at the clock, completely turned around. Wesley is up on time. He can play rook e3 check.
But the question always is rook e3 check, king c4. You helping my king?
I think he wants something with e4 where he can sack and rush the f pawn. I think he's going to try to punch e4 through.
So after king c4, play e4.
Yeah,
you're right. Just get rid of the f3 pawn so that your f pawn can start.
Yeah, here he goes. E4. I think you want to take with the bishop to force the rook ending. Oh, totally wrong. He goes for this. What does Maxime see here? I think that was a very dangerous decision because you can't play rook f5, knight d6 check. So did he just miss that? I mean, no, but now there's knight d2, isn't there?
Knight d2, king d4.
And knight b3. Okay, black has a draw if he wants it.
Wait, but then I go king d5. So my king
but
can
king
escape your
d5,
knight.
you block the f. Oh, no, I can't do both. Okay, here's the line. I thought I could push f and trade at the same time while the bishop is blocked, but I can't. And if I trade, he takes, and the bishop guards f3. So probably Maxime has already calculated all this.
I mean, the essential question I was wondering was who was playing for a win, and
I don't have the answer.
I think now we're going to see the players shake hands soon, because
yeah,
you can go corral this f pawn, but you have to give up your b pawn in the process. So I think just you can take on e4 with either b5, catching me off guard.
I think Maxime is saying, I think I'm the one playing for a win now. He's going to take the knight with the king, keep the rook in. I think now Wesley needs to come behind the pawn. This is rook ending lessons here, everyone. You don't want your rook stuck in front of a pawn in prison. So I think Wesley will recognize he's the one playing for a draw and play rook c1, rook b1.
I think he'll play rook c5 here. And
rook c5, dude, that was a sick find. That's a great move.
Trade.
Let me show it. Let me show it, Robert. You're so sneaky.